And as we speak, the world's richest man, Elon Musk, has full access to the U.S. Treasury federal payment system, and Democrats are ringing the alarm bell. Take a look.
Before our very eyes, an unelected shadow government is conducting a hostile takeover of the federal government.
This is the most corrupt administration in our history, and it's putting our economy, our government, and our most at-risk communities in serious jeopardy.
Elon and his handful of friends now have full access to your personal and financial information that's in the system. Your payment history, your social security number, your bank account numbers. Elon now has the power to suck out all of that information for his own use.
Yeah. So, the White House, however, is claiming that they're keeping his power in check. Take a look.
Mr. President, why is it important for Elon Musk to have access to the payment systems at Treasury?
Well, he's got access only to letting people go that he thinks are no good if we agree with him, and it's only if we agree with him. He's a very talented guy from the standpoint of management and costs. Elon can't do and won't do anything without our approval, and we'll give him the approval where appropriate. Where not appropriate, we won't. He's running, obviously, a big company. It has nothing to do, if there's a conflict, that we won't let him get near it. But he does have a good natural instinct. He's got a team of very talented people. We're trying to shrink government, and he can probably shrink it as well as anybody else, if not better.
So, I mean, are Americans going to be okay with Musk? Oh, okay. A guy nobody voted for having all this kind of power. And, you know, the news outlet Wired found out that at least 6 of the gentlemen on Elon Musk's team are between the ages of 19 to 24 with little or no government experience, and one is in college. I mean, who are these people, and why do they have access to any of your business?
Well, they don't. What they're doing is actually illegal. Everyone knows that the separation of powers allows for Congress to decide. They have the power of the purse. This is money that was already allocated from taxpayer money. And to stop it is actually, there was an act passed in 1974, right? I think it was the Impoundment Control Act, because they feared Nixon was blocking programs where Congress had already approved funds because he didn't like them. So it's beyond Elon Musk. Donald Trump doesn't have the power to do what he's doing right now, but I wonder where the screaming is, because Donald Trump floods the zone. We talked about how the last couple weeks has felt like a year. It's only been a couple weeks. And what he's doing is
two, by the way.
2 weeks. He's, while ending DEI, the immigration raids that they aired out all over television, started a trade war. But meanwhile, this is the thing people should keep their eye on, because this flies in the face of our Constitution. And that's where people should be enraged.
Yeah.
I think this is what he's doing. You know, I've given so much thought to it when we first started learning about Elon Musk now being a special government employee, which means he has top security clearance, but he doesn't have the obligations that a full federal employee has, so he doesn't have to give the same amount of disclosures. He has less conflicts of interest. And it seems to me that when I put my legal hat on, what Donald Trump is trying to do is he's trying to expand the powers of the executive branch. We all know, or we should know in this country, that there are 3 co-equal branches of government. You got
Who are they, Sonny?
Okay, so you've got the judicial branch, you've got the executive branch, and you've got the legislative branch. The legislative branch is the branch that Sarah was just talking about, which is Congress, right? So you've got the House and Senate, power of the purse. What he is trying to do is trying to figure out how he can expand his power, the power of the executive branch, and have a little more power over Congress. And he certainly has kind of a bit of power over the judicial branch, because the top of the judicial branch is the Supreme Court, which he has packed with loyalists. So in my view, I think he's causing a constitutional crisis intentionally, so that this goes to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court, ladies and gentlemen, say, yeah, he can do this, our Constitution, as we've known it, is basically going to change forever. It will not be the Constitution that the framers of our government, our country, thought of.
Well, it kind of feels like if a tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, did it even fall? In that Congress also has to fight back and want to reclaim the power of the purse. And Congress really has two primary authorities, declaring war and the power of the purse in the House. They've completely ceded authorization of use of military force to the executive branch for decades. But now, even Republicans who support Trump's agenda, what even is the purpose of being in Congress if things that you vote for, that you work on, could be just completely thrown out the window by the president? And executive overreach isn't anything new. Previous presidents have done it. But this is unlike anything we've seen. And I'll say this, Republicans have always believed in shrinking the size of government. We've believed in cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, and streamlining agencies when we can, auditing agencies when we can. But what I'm struck by is it's unclear what's being audited, what's being written out, what we're taking funding from. One example, I would argue one of the most successful government programs in American history, PEPFAR, which basically has saved 25 million lives in Africa with AIDS and HIV medication. And it's also soft power for us to compete with China and have influence there. We don't know if it's operationally working right now because of how unclear these orders have been. Senator Cassidy has talked about it. So the White House owes America clarity. They need to say, are we doing away with USAID or are we moving it under the State Department? Are we doing away with the Department of Education? That's something that is in the press right now that might be next on the chopping block. There is a way to streamline and to cut funding, and then there's doing away with congressional.
Well, they could vote on it. They have all the power right now.
And let's not forget, USAID advances national security, works to protect human rights and improve global health. The agency is funded by taxpayer dollars, authorized by Congress. No one said to us, hey, we looked at this in the last 2 weeks, and we've decided that this isn't a good idea. What do you think? And the last thing I'm going to say is that in 2023, USAID was less than 1% of the federal budget. So why they're going after that?
Well, can I say something about that? You know, we all talked about how Marco Rubio heading, the State Department or being the Secretary of State, he was so supremely qualified. And that was one of the good cabinet choices that was made. Well, he has installed an assistant, sort of the second in command in the state. His name is Beatty, I believe is his last name.
He's an undersecretary.
He's the undersecretary. I hope we have a clip of of his text. He has said that white men need to be in charge of everything rather than anyone else. And there are about 4 to 5, and he's been saying this on X for about 5 years. And so there are years and years of his bigotry on display. And Marco Rubio thinks that that person is appropriate to be his undersecretary and also to have a hand in U.S. aid. So I'm very concerned about that.
We're short on time, but very quickly on that. This is an individual who was fired from the first Trump administration for attending a white nationalist rally. The very position he's holding in an acting capacity was held by 2 very qualified and competent women in the previous Trump term. To me, it underscores how different this term will be than the first one, and I think people need to pay attention.
Well, what you really need to know is this is not new. This visual that you're seeing is not new. When I was a little girl, that's kind of what Washington looked like. Those are the folks that were in. At one point, we had the dragon, one of the head dragons.
Oh, yes, the KKK.
We've had this is not new. What is going to be new is if we stop paying attention. That's going to be new, because the thing that got Americans moving was they didn't like that system. That system didn't work. So we worked and tried to get women where they needed to be, people of color where they needed to be, freedoms for gay. We fought for all of that because that was the country we were trying to get into. So see everything we're talking about, hear us, and then you make a decision where you stand on all of this. Because it's really up to each individual person whether they're going to participate or not.